Thank you for being here, and help me welcome Byron Mallott.
Thank you all so very much. Alaska is one of the greatest places on the face of the earth. It is a place of people continuously aspiring to make it a better place for their children. It is a place that rivals a freestanding country in terms of its size and its diversity, its geography, its richness, the economic opportunities still available to us, and most importantly, the kind of good society that we Alaskans can build that can be an example to the rest of the world. We live in an incredibly unique place, a place in which our urban areas rival that of anywhere else in our country, where we have every service, every amenity. We have arts and scientists, we have universities, we have great schools. We have an economy that at least today is still thriving. We also have an Alaska that is very different. An Alaska unlike most places, at least in our country. An Alaska in which what I've just described does not exist. An Alaska in which people who go to the far reaches of our state to build lives based upon their own labor and their own values and their own conscience can make a special place. A place where first Alaskans still live on their homelands. I've had the opportunity, working with Governor Walker over the past months in Juneau, dealing with Alaska's fiscal circumstance, to have in some ways the scales ripped from my eyes. To be able to see a history of accommodating large industry in order to advance their economic interests, certainly in the context by public policy makers of creating benefit for Alaska also. But we have seen, for example, an oil tax credit program developed at the high tide of oil production and oil price. And we see it now at the low tide of those same factors, and know that they were extraordinarily generous. They would have provided Alaska billions, certainly greater billions, to them and their shareholders. Incentives that would, but for where we find ourselves today, largely gone unheeded and unnoticed, and arguably decent public policy. But that is not the case in our current reality. But that's not why I bring them to your attention. They must, of course, be dealt with. Otherwise, next year, the state of Alaska will be writing checks to the oil industry in order to pay them for the oil that they produce on our behalf. But why I mention it really is this. In the 50 years of Alaska statehood, I know of no single incentive that has been put in place to develop rural Alaska. Nothing in public policy that reaches out and says, putting money in your place is not a sunk cost, it is an investment. Makes my blood boil. It makes my blood boil because an Alaskan, as someone purportedly with some experience, I did not see myself what we could do to build all of Alaska. We have the opportunity still to do so.
Yes, we do.
I would hope, and I trust, that in the work that you are setting about, looking appropriately so at a national convention and the selection of a presidential candidate, that you will also think of Alaska, that you will think about this place, that you will think about what we need as Alaskans to make this place a better place than it is today. A place in which the disparities that we see so glaringly are done away with.
Yes.
In every place of conscience, of philosophy, of belief, of value, of geography, of economy, of social place. It is a task that every Alaskan must be embarked upon. No party, no group, no segment of Alaska can self-righteously claim ownership of any aspect of what we must do together as Alaskans. We are well into a continuing session of the Alaska Legislature, which should have been ended at 90 days, as the will of the Alaskan people have made very clear is their wish. I don't think it is arguable that this session of the Alaska Legislature is as important as the first session of the legislature at the creation of the state of Alaska. When Alaskan leaders with vision said, this is the state we are going to build, and they took a constitution that they themselves had drafted and began to implement it and put in place the structures. At a time when Alaska's revenues were less than $200 million to the state budget. Still dreamed, still did things, went out with a bond issue to begin building Alaska's infrastructure with incredible uncertainty before us, but with the belief that Alaskans would step up and pay for those things which would build their future, would pay for themselves. We aren't there anymore. We are at a different place. We have become so used to the constant flow of billions of dollars from Prudhoe Bay that in many ways those things that make us people who care and have passion and who have core values and who live by principles that have made Alaska and this country great have somehow been numbed. And it is gatherings like this and other groups meeting across the state that must not only demand that the legislature do its part, but step up ourselves as communities and families and individuals and say we are going to put ourselves in play. We are going to be the arbiters of Alaska's future. And you must help Governor Walker and those who desire to lead in the legislature in Juneau when he says, as he clearly has, I will keep you here as long as it takes to build a good future for Alaska. It is up to the people of Alaska to say to those that you elected, they aren't them in Juneau. They are those that each of us have elected. And we must say, and we must make clear, that you will either lead or the voice and the vote of the Alaskan people will remove you from office and we will put real leaders in place. I will be forever grateful for the path that began with this party for me and statewide office. It took a turn that none of us ever anticipated, but the decisions that we made were based on the notion that it wasn't about being governor. It was about changing public policy in Alaska and creating a future in which every Alaskan feels that they have a place and a choice and an opportunity. And we did. We, Governor Walker and myself, will reach out to every group, every gathering, every individual. I have traveled over 190,000 miles, mostly within Alaska, since we took office. And it's all about connecting with Alaskans, talking, learning, understanding, so that the decisions we make reflect the will of the Alaskan people wherever they are situated, and particularly reaching out consciously to those whose voice has been faint, to those whose voice has not been heard, to those who need the goodness that good government can bring. It's and it began here. I'll never forget a call to your former chair, Mike Wenster, saying, Mike, I think we need to do this. I will do it on two conditions: that you release me from my obligation to this race, having just won a primary. It is an obligation that I take almost as seriously as my vow of marriage. I also want the Democratic Party to support me in my ongoing efforts to change Alaska. And Mike said, Byron, I want to say one thing to you. I want you to understand that if you choose to continue as our nominee, we will support you 100%. But if you choose the path that you've described to me, this was like 10 o'clock at night, and it had to be done by Tuesday because the ballots were going to be printed. He said, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning and we'll see what we can do. And we made history. But my job now, and that of Governor Walker, is to reach out to every Alaskan, regardless of party, regardless of creed, regardless of conscience, regardless of what they believe in personally, and say, what can we do together to make Alaska a better place for every single one of us? And that is what we have set about to do, and we look forward to constantly touching, reaching out, clasping, looking Alaskans in the eye and saying, we can do this together. And I commend to you the next several days in which you will be making incredibly important decisions, both for Alaska and for our nation, and leave you with this final thought. Think of Alaska first. Think of this place we have still to build. Think of the children we have still to educate. Think of the differences amongst us that we must continue to bridge. Think of in 50 years when we celebrate the centennial of Alaska statehood, and the rest of the world looks at us. Not that we aspire to their approval, but that we aspire to have achieved something that possibly no other place in our country has done. And that is for the rest of the world to look at Alaska and say, they got it right. They took care of their kids. They have one of the best educational systems in the nation. It encompasses every single child, no matter where they are located. They have a good economy that is fair and treats and creates opportunity for every single worker in that place. They have a good society in which First Peoples still live on their lands. They are the one state that half a century ago said all languages are our official language. They are the place that said to the rest of the world, we were a small population in a very big place. And we had more in historical terms that suggested we would be driven apart by those differences. And we overcame them, and we made Alaska a beacon to the rest of the world. That should be our aspiration. Thank you so much.